Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome to another exciting episode of Psychology Talks, where we explore human side of leadership, performance, and what truly drives success in today's complex world. And today's conversation is about challenging a belief that many of us have, because we've been conditioned to accept that when the things go wrong in organization, it's the people. But today we're going to discuss that what if the people are already working very well, and it's the system that is holding them back. And we discuss the psychology and neuroscience of how these mechanism works. And we are so honored to be joined today by Miss Hanna Bauer. She's the founder and CEO of HEARTnomics, a seasoned leadership strategist with nearly 3 decades of experience serving as CEO, board chair, and executive director. She brings a rare combination of real world execution, system thinking, and human centered leadership. But her perspective was shaped by her experience that she has gone through her personal journey with severe heart disease and life-changing procedure that taught her powerful lessons of life. So, anyways, without further ado, let's dive in and start the conversation. So, first of all, thank you so much for joining us today, Hannah.
Oh my goodness, it's such a pleasure to be here with you, Embreem. A true honor. I'm super excited. I remember still the time that we connected and
Yeah.
it just went on. We found so many opportunities. So I am super excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you so much. Likewise, I was so much looking forward to this conversation because, as you know, this is my favorite topic. So I know that we can have fun and we can enjoy our conversation, and I'm sure that our audience will also learn a lot from this. So I gave a very very brief introduction about you, but let's educate ourselves with like how you started your journey, what were your experiences, and how it all shaped you to start this heartnomics
Hmm.
and what it is about this. Okay.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. I do get asked this question, and bottom
Mhm.
line is it wasn't started by inspiration. It was really started by desperation, and it was really the desperation of like living, survival, breathing. I think that every opportunity in my life, even if, as a business owner, when I was trying to keep my business alive and make sure money was coming, as a individual, as a young kid, just trying to breathe, and even in life, just life gets hard trying to figure it out in those parts. I go back to the very beginning in the foundation when I was diagnosed at the age of 4. Now, I didn't understand it. I was a kid. But I was diagnosed with a terminal condition, a form of heart disease where my heart will go super fast with tachycardia, but also would go irregular. So it meant it would go also arrhythmic. And those were unexpected episodes. It wasn't like, oh, okay, if I did this morning, then this may happen, kind of like, you kind of like, oh, I know this is going to impact me, but I'm just going to do it anyways. It wasn't like that. There wasn't really like, it could have been a sneeze. It could have been me sleeping. It could have been like just make one wrong turn. And suddenly, boop,
Oh,
my heart will go
oh,
into like, yeah, into those dangerous rhythms of
oh.
200, 220, and it wouldn't stop. It would
Mhm.
go for maybe, it could be hours, it could be days. And its
Oh.
worst cases, it were weeks. So you can imagine it's like if you're in a treadmill or if you've been running, that your
Mhm.
heart rate is fast. By the full day where you're not stopping, you feel exhausted. By day 2, I mean, you're really basically
Mhm.
almost immobile because you can't breathe. So a lot of what I share now with leaders is actually being in those moments where uncertainty suddenly impacts you. And yes, it's really, we both face that heart racing, right? When you get scared or when you're out of breath or that part, and basically how I overcame that as far as managing it in my body while the opportunity came for a actual innovative surgery that saved my life.
Mhm.
But there was the sustaining up to that point. But then even in learning for me how even that surgery came about was so impactful. um, Fast forward at the age of 14 in 1992, there was an opportunity to perform a never been done high risk cardiac surgery called an ablation.
Oh.
And this was an experiment among 3 hospitals here in Atlanta. And this is what gave birth to what now is the way that heart disease is treated, where no longer a lot of kids have to go through open heart surgery, and they can survive these, well, some people may call even some of those flutters, some of the arrhythmia, the heart part. But what really impacted me was not then, of course, the fact that I had a chance to live, but 20 years later is when I got a call from the hospital because they were going to do a documentary on it. And that's when I really got the scoop on the story, like what happened. And this is where I heard what the doctor said when they asked them, what were you doing? What were you doing, with Hannah? What was it, the outcome? And then I remember just standing there and hearing him say, we were trying to keep her alive long enough for technology to catch up. And that was a moment that I would say is both the birth of HEARTnomics. That was the birth of my entire methodology, because I'm thinking, well, what kept me alive long enough in a moment of no solution? Well, that was love. It was the love from my family, the love of the community, the love of the medical community, even to continue to give me hope in an area where there was really no hope at the time. There was no cure. But also, what was that technology? Yes, I know that it was innovative, but the technology also came in from learning from those failures. It was the processes, it was the systems, it was the testing in a sense, and then going back to the board and doing that in real time, but at the same time, taking care of the very human that they're trying to save. So that to me is what HEARTnomics is. HEARTnomics is the economy of the heart. There is an ROI to the heart, doing heart work, not only hard work. Definitely is they go related. It is the love. It is all of the things that we require of our leaders, right? Empathy. We require them to have vision. We require them to have passion. We require them to do equip, delegate, develop. But at the same time, it's the excellence that we do it in, because we have to learn. And how do we learn? We learn through failure. So create environments where processes and systems exist, where we can catch those failures, where we can learn from those failures, and we can innovate. And I find leadership is the way that we combine both.
Wow. I mean, it's like as I was listening to your story, and lots of questions were coming to my mind that, first of all, it's very rare disease. I've never heard about it before, that, someone who's going through these kind of like out of rhythm heart problem. Um, so the first question is that how did you actually survive this? I know that you mentioned that it's love or something, but of course, especially it would have strained your physical health at that time also, because it's not, because you can't maintain or you can't sustain such high heartbeat level for days.
Right.
You said that
Right.
like we can, like, let alone you say that for hours, like no one can actually survive that kind
Yeah.
of heart rate for hours, but you mentioned that you survived for like days or even weeks. So what were the strategies at that point in time? Yeah.
Well, the first strategy was breathe. I had to learn to breathe, because and I think anybody who has gone through a fear or something, like that's the first thing, is like learning to catch your breath.
Yeah.
We even call it catch your breath.
Yes.
When
Okay.
as a kid you're going through that, you don't really understand. I mean, 6 years old, I'm not understanding this. I just know how my body feels. And then it's also, like you said, it's rare. People don't see it in your face.
Yeah.
They think everything's fine. And suddenly you pass out. It's like, wait, what happened? So that was my experience. A lot of times it was being cautious. I had to learn to be very cautious. I would breathe. And even those times when I had times in between the episodes, what I really learned was to take in the fullness of that moment, because I didn't know when I was going to have that moment again.
Yeah.
So it was like being in that full presence of that moment, of remembering the sounds, the people, things that surround it. As a kid, it was being in that presence that also sustained me through those hard ones. Obviously, being open. The As a kid, again, this is me as a child, right? Like I don't understand. Like, okay, now we're gonna do this part. We're gonna do that. Learning to rely. My grandmother was a big key for me. My grandmother, when I would go through these episodes, they're very scary. So, what did it feel like? Imagine that you have your hair, and suddenly your head's being held underwater,
Oh,
and you don't know
yeah.
when you're gonna be able to catch up to take a breath. That
Yeah.
was how I lived, like many times. It was like feeling like my head was underwater, not being able to know that. So to
Mhm.
have the feeling, physical feeling of a hand of,
Yeah.
with me at that time,
Mhm.
understanding the physical and knowing that at that moment, she's going through it with me,
Yeah.
that helped me overcome a lot. So as a kid, that's how went through it. Just even somebody holding my hand. There was nothing else
Yeah.
I could do. Just
Yeah.
hold my hand. And that went even through my teenage years. When I was a teenager, learning, being in a hospital bed can be very isolating. And of course, it got more technology, right? I mean, you have monitors and you have cords everywhere. So there was, a lot more that came from that. I had 2 heart attacks by the age of 10.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it's a very painful disease. The form that I had, very painful. Well, I remember when we first got to the United States, even like the doctors, there were times when, in order for them to check that I was indeed alive, is by putting a mirror under my nose
Oh.
to confirm
Mhm.
that it fucked up. So
Oh.
like, that was a level. So as a kid trying to understand, like, I am alive. So the signs of living. And I started looking at that. I think that was the other part. How would I cope? How would I manage in times were really hard? It's in looking for those signs of life, signs that would remind me, connect me with those moments, and
Mhm.
people. Really, honestly, people, and a lot of prayer. I can't
Yes.
deny the whole power of prayer. We had a lot of people praying for us. There's a lot of big story about faith.
Yeah.
But it's old, and that's the thing. It's like, because I, again, as a kid, I'm going through it. I'm surviving, right? I can't even imagine what my mom went through. So I talk about from my part, but my mom, who was my advocate,
Mhm.
seeing all this, I learned even from that. So as long as my mom was advocating, I knew it was going to be okay. That was the other part.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about lots of things that we can actually expand a little bit more on that. Especially you said that your grandmother was there,
Yes,
just holding someone's hand and
yes,
just being there. It's it has such a deep impact when someone is
yeah,
going through challenging time. Not only like you've been going through the physical challenges, but I've seen like when I've actually provided counseling to people who've been going through severe depression or some mental anxiety or something. It's not just sometimes that I've learned that they don't need any advice or something. They
yeah,
just need someone to be there, and because we
yeah,
don't know that what past experience they had,
correct.
and they know exactly that what needs to be done. But at that point in time, people actually feel so lonely, and
Yeah,
that's what actually makes the situation really worse. So if someone is there with them or with anybody, it's just like being there for some their moral support. It makes whole lot of difference. And as also you said that your mom was there, an advocate, and I think she is a great person. And then I think she was the one, because of, like, you're here and like sharing your story with us. It's just like giving that positive message, like
yeah,
reinforcement that everything's going to be okay. It's a big thing, although these are very small lines, and like we have heard it like thousands of times. But when it happens in that moment,
yeah,
if someone just says these things, it makes the entire, like, it makes a difference. It makes a whole lot of difference. So, and you're a living proof of that.
yeah,
So I'm
yeah,
so glad that you're sharing this with the world. And those people who are going through with such kind of experiences,
mhm,
they know that they can overcome all these things. And it's not something that it's a rocket science that they cannot do it. Yes, it's difficult, it's very challenging, as you said, that especially like when people are thinking that you are not alive, and they are putting like the mirror under your nose to see that if it fogs up. So these kind of experience just tell us that how faith can actually bring back your life. So
absolutely.
this is really really amazing that you shared today. So like coming, yeah, sorry, you were saying
No,
something.
it's true. I think there's reality what you just said. I think the whole, sometimes we do feel isolated because we don't find people that understand. And I know even in a leader's way, a lot of times it feels like that. It might even feel lonely. It shouldn't be, right, but it really is not. But we do feel it like that.
Yeah.
As leaders, like nobody will understand. And you know what? It's okay.
Yeah.
because the same way we won't understand everything from somebody else. And I think that's even as my grandmother, as much as she loved me, she didn't completely understand the fullness, but she didn't have to in
Yeah.
order to be that force, that anchor for me. She just had to hold me and be there. That's it. Not really like there was no time to figure out understanding each other. I
Yeah.
was 6 years old. I was 8 years old. I wasn't gonna understand. She wasn't gonna understand me. Bottom line, I wasn't breathing. I just needed to breathe. And I just
Yeah.
needed someone there to be strong enough with me to go through it. And I believe
Yeah.
that's the story that we have right now with our organizations, with leadership, with our families, with the many
Yeah.
things that we go through.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. And you've spoken about this as experiences that you that taught you to, that when system moves, rhythm and everything
Yes.
downstreams, the struggles and something. So how did that insight, came into you and it started to begin as, or you started to align with your working and with your leadership styles?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. One is once I had my like go good card, right? Like once I went to like, hey, you're normal, go live. It's like,
Yeah.
how? I really didn't even know how. And I would say there was even like a time of, where I'm well, like my heart's good. I'm not really having to face all this stuff, but yet I didn't know what it was like to be well. Like I didn't know how to live with that. I was like, is something going to happen? Or I need somebody to tell me I'm okay, or I need somebody to validate that indeed I'm not okay.
Yeah.
Either one of, well, any one of those. So for me, it was, I had to learn, in a sense, I had to learn my own humanity. I had
Yeah.
to learn to be human. I had to learn to understand that, there's pain is normal. It's not a bad thing. There's, it's part of that. Feeling good is also normal. It's a part of life.
Yes.
So the first thing was, honestly, when I talk about alignment, it was because, again, my own desperation of like, how do you do this human thing when I've been inside a hospital for so long and people
Yeah.
caring for me, talking for me, and all this other part. So I realized that there were things that I had to learn about my environment and about myself, so that I realized what being well was, and being well with being well,
Mm.
and moving along. So that's where the whole concept, I would say, for alignment came for me.
Yeah.
Later on, as a leader, hey, you involve more people. Humans hang out with
Yeah.
other humans. Well,
Yeah.
anytime you bring in another human, you're expanding complexity, because we're all
Yes.
different. We all talk different. We have different perspectives. We have different passions. We have all these different parts. So how do you do life with people that may not have the same passions, or with people that they may not have the same way as you, may not
Yeah.
look like you, do not have the background that you have. So that complexity for me, I was like both mesmerized, overwhelmed by it, but also was
Mhm.
very curious. And
Mhm.
that curiosity is what came the whole part of like, well, can I learn this? And that's where my psychology degree came in. That's where
Yeah.
my disc certifications came in. And again, it was because I was trying to even learn, how do we communicate? How do we do that part? And that's where the systems started happening. Now, did I learn and everything was great for that? No, I failed a lot. And I had to come face to face with my failures. Um,
Yeah.
I would even say, like, even in my heart disease, I didn't talk about it for about good, almost, 20 years, until basically the hospital called me
Oh.
and they're like, oh, that's a big deal.
Mm.
Like, well, what happened? Why would somebody care?
Yeah.
And then that's when I realized how my relationship with failure was not a good relationship. So
Mhm.
that's also where HEARTnomics came in. I had to get a healthy relationship with failure, and had a way to not only face it, manage it, but really learn from it. So
Mm.
I found that when I went back into my own heart story to get that healthy relationship.
Wow, what a brilliant insight! And you actually said it so brilliantly that it's many times we actually go through like challenges in our life, and we take the failure as an excuse to give up, right? Because
Yes.
we think that we can't go forward. But as you said, that failures are there and they're there to teach us something, right? So,
Yeah.
and you learn from each failure that these are the things that happening to you is not happening for without any reason. They are there for a reason, and the reason is that you learn the lesson from it and make it, and start like telling people that how they can also survive in these kind of experiences, in these challenges, in these time of situations. So I think, and that's what you're doing, which is a brilliant work at this point in time, that a lot of people who actually go through these kind of challenges, they tend to give hope. They
Mhm.
think that, these failures are the end of the journey. But the thing is that they don't realize that this is the beginning of the journey, because I
Yeah,
think at every step we face so many challenges. And the challenges doesn't mean that, we overcome all the time. Challenges mean sometimes we fail. I would say that most of the time we fail, and very few time we succeed. And but that success comes from all those failures that we go through during
absolutely.
that journey. So
Yeah.
that's exactly what happened.
So let me tell you something on that one.
Yeah.
I actually realized how unhealthy my relationship was with failure
Mhm.
because, like I said, I had many things that failed. One of them, well, I had a heart cath that failed. I had the open heart surgery that failed. It cost a lot. Like,
Oh,
this was like the thing. This was going to be the solution. Like they
yeah.
had it, and now, again, going through the episodes, they immediately tested for my heart if it had worked, the open heart surgery, and it didn't. My heart immediately went into tachycardia, but now I'm cut open. I mean, I've been sawed basically in half. I now have this permanent scar. I was 12. So
Oh,
now entering as a teenage girl with a big scar,
oh,
not being able to twist right, move right. It was a
oh,
very painful recovery time. And still
mhm.
trying to go to school and not feel weird. I had to wear compression socks. I had to, like, just
Oh,
not very nice things. And I remember that made such an impression on me for years that every time I would see that scar, it just reminded me of that failure. It's kind of like a waste. Even
yeah.
after I was well, I had this thought of it was a waste. And then because also, you know what? There were some people that weren't nice about it. Some people will look at the
Yeah.
scar and they're like, "Ooh, what's that? That's
Yeah.
disgusting. That looks gross," especially kids because they don't know. I mean, like, just
Yeah.
don't know. You're like, it's like, what is that? You mind me asking, what is that? And I
Yeah.
started taking on this identity of like, oh, let me hide it. Let me hold this far. Let me put some makeup on. Let me make sure everything's nothing's showing. Nobody can see the scar. And I did. It wasn't until I got a perspective change, and that came again over 25 years later, when it was actually my husband Jose who told me that he said that my scar was beautiful. It was actually the fact that in the scar that he saw like she has a story. It actually made him look beyond that. And it was the first time I started looking at it that my scar was not a failure. My scar was not a waste. My scar was actually part of the progress. It was because of this scar that the solution came about. If this scar hadn't happened, if this surgery had not happened, we would have never gotten to the innovative surgery where it did cause a solution. And what was that solution? When they did the documentary at the time back in 2015, it had saved 3,000 other kids at that point. So it wasn't a failure at all. The scar is not a failure. The failures are not a waste. They're part of the process. They're part of coming up with that innovative solutions. But I needed to have a perspective change on what that was. And now it's what gives me the strength. Actually, I'm very proud of it. Like, hey,
Yeah.
it's part of the story.
Yeah, I mean, it takes, as you said, like it takes a lot of courage. Like you said, the 25 years
Yeah.
to actually accept that this is not a failure, and
Mm-hmm.
this is actually a part of your courage. This is a badge, or I would say this is a sign that you survived that. This is a sign that you've gone through it and you learned from this. It is something that we need to honor, these scars or these failures, that these are there to make us who we are today. So I think
Yeah.
that's something
It's
very
proof.
important.
Do you know that everything's so good right now that even some of
Yeah.
my doctors, my general doctors, they don't believe I had a heart disease. I literally have to show my scar to prove, like, no, this happened. This
Yeah.
happened. Like, oh, I would have never thought that. I mean, that's a great miracle that it is. That's like the other
Yeah.
part. But sometimes, like, it's like it serves as proof. Like, okay, well, then let me hear what you have to say.
Yes. Yes, definitely. So you actually also talk about that, especially in the workplace, and especially when the people are working, and it's not something that sometimes that you don't have a talented team.
Mhm.
Sometimes the system is not right. So
Right.
what do you think that what goes wrong? Why people are so much focused more on people and not fixing the system when they're seeing that it's they have the talented team, but it's they're not getting the outcome, they're not getting the results that they desire.
So what I've come to find out is like there's almost like two types of organizations, right? I mean, there's organizations that are very much people centered, they're vision minded. They may even be like by the founder. Even there's like a movement. Like there's like this whole, not only like, hey, we want to be here investing our time, but they're emotionally invested even in the outcome or the daily activities of the organization. um, but they may not have the processes and systems in place to catch those opportunities. Then I see the other organizations that may be very rigid, very compliant, driven. They have a memo for everything. They have a process for everything. They have an SOP for all the stuff. They have the KPIs. They have all these measurements, and that rules over sometimes common sense. you know, and then really serving the people, like allowing people to do their thing. So I come to see both. One is too so rigid that any change from the outside can easily start fracturing that. The other one that can feel so chaotic that we really don't know that we're getting ahead. Are we even getting ahead? Because we don't even see that. So what I come to find is that what we have to do again, you it just again, just like in my heart, I could have had all the love around me, which I did. It didn't solve my problem. They had to have a way, a scientific, a process, a technology to be able to go in there, learn what the problem is, try different solutions, fail, learn again, try different solutions, fail. They were all equally invested. They just did it differently. So that's where I see a lot of times love is a start, hope is a catalyst for us to be able to find those solutions. But there has to be also a way, and it's just as much of a commitment in those processes and the systems. It doesn't mean that you're absent because you don't know what the system is. It doesn't mean that you're absent of the system. I
Yeah.
don't know every single system in my body. I do not have a cardiovascular, I have a nervous system, I have a skeletal system, right? Do I know how they all work? I don't know. But I'm a human, so I know those systems are there. Same thing with organizations. You may not know all the systems that are there, but they're there because every
Yeah.
organization has those same systems, right? We have the financial system, we have the technology systems, we have the leadership systems, we have the management systems, right? We have the way that we hire. So those systems are there. Doesn't mean that our inability to see it or really understand it, it means that there's the absence of it, just like the process.
Yeah.
Because we don't know the process doesn't mean that there's not a process. The process might be that it's in your head and somebody asks you the question. That's a process. How do you
Yeah.
do this? You just ask Anne Bream and she'll tell you. That's the process. So now it may not be written somewhere. It doesn't mean that
Yeah.
it's absent. So a lot of times that's what happens when we have people or they haven't taken the opportunity to to really have the systematic view. What are the systems inside my organization, and also what are the processes that are part of that system? Like, for example, the cardiovascular system is heart is part of it, but it's not the only part of it, right? I mean, like you have different inside parts. You have like the ventricles, you have the chambers, you have the arteries, you have the veins, right? I mean, there's a whole part of circulatory system. So it's understanding that every organization has that. We all have subsystems. We have an internal customer that we are currently serving, and we have the external customer, how that external customer is impacted by our internal. So why do they fail? Because sometimes we're looking at how the customer experiences, how the customer experience, what is there, and we're failing to understand how that customer experience is even being served by our internal systems, our internal customer system. And do our leaders even know who their customer is?
Yes, I think you actually explained it so well that that is the main dilemma I think of this these days, that organizations have become so complicated that they have systems and systems and systems, layers of like all the systems. But the thing is that they made all these systems to make things easy,
Easier.
which actually it does
Accountable.
happen. Yes, does happen that it makes it easier, but sometimes it restricts the growth because sometimes they have to go through these all the bureaucratic system that makes the people's progress really slower. I think Elon Musk has this in their organization, that they say that like they can bypass all the system, and what they do is, like, especially in Tesla, what they did last year, like I was not last year, like a few years back, I was reading their his biography. They said like what they could achieve in Tesla in weeks, where what other automobile, like industries could have done, like taken 6 months or more than 6 months. It's just because they bypass all those systems, because sometimes when they see that it's more efficient, they don't need to follow through the same system. So I
Right.
think some, as you said, that somebody has to have a big picture, or like has a view, outside view, who can actually judge that what's going on. So now I will ask that, what do you think, what are the early warning signs that an organization, these were early warning signs for any organizations to judge that they are going out of alignment, or the system is going somewhere wrong, or it's blocking their progress?
So there's a question I would say even before that, because I mean, like every organization has their mission and their vision, right? There's the purpose for why they're there. So either if it's like they're very human oriented, or even if there's their process and systems is oriented, it's understanding what their actual, how they actually operate, how does it serve the mission and the vision. You may have currently a culture that is not conducive to serve that mission and that vision. So I would start there. Is the culture that we have, is it yielding the result? Are we closer, as just big picture, like are we closer to that what we envision, organization to be able to bring forth? Are we any closer today? And if the answer is not, I do need to take a look at my culture, because
Yeah.
nothing happens in an organization outside of culture. There's no decision, there's no hire, there's no product, there's nothing else that doesn't happen inside culture. You got to think about culture is not this nice to have, it is the organism, it is the organization. So I would say that would be the first thing, because where you feel the symptom? Well, if you're very much a process oriented culture, where that's what all that matters, you may think the symptom comes in that, hey, we're not being compliant. That the symptom might be that we don't have a process for that, and we don't have a system for that, and we already have all this over processing. We may think that we need to hire more people to write more processes instead of people that are implementing or integrating or actually do this stuff, right? So you have to think about that, because we could actually start developing or thinking, if we have a gap here, then we need to even add more to that, instead of like, wait a second, I actually need to take less of that because I need to put in my resources and my focus here. So for those organizations where maybe they're like, everybody's like, hey, everybody knows their place, so everything's in their head, and we just come together and it gets done, and
Yeah.
they want to scale, it may not happen. It may not happen,
Yeah.
especially if you have something that happens unfortunate, right? Where before the entire knowledge of your system, of your process, of your organization may actually literally walk away when a person is no longer with you, either voluntary or involuntarily. So a company that is being led more like that may actually think it, and people, well, we need more time together, or we need more relationships. And in reality, they already get along great. They can think together, they move together, they understand. But what's missing is the structure, so they somebody else, so that we can scale. Because when we're talking about multiplication and business systems, we're talking about something that's replicable, something that's that's repeatable, something that somebody else can do, so that we can then multiply. Because that's the whole purpose. We have to multiply. We have to be able to do things also in different environments. So what's missing there is, again, the one who's going to tell you what's the real stopping point is asking that question. Are we closer to our mission today than where
Yeah.
we were yesterday? Are we, or that we were last year? And the question is, how do I know? If I don't know, that's the first place to look. If you don't know, your people likely don't know either.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you brought again a very good point here, that it's like finding out that what is the culture, how people are behaving, and if the people don't know, and then there's one thing that I've noticed these days, especially that is the economic situation is going on. So people, especially even if the culture is the same way, right? There is a deep down fear that going on inside that,
Mhm.
because there's always a fear of losing a job or a fear of, because nobody likes to actually lose a job, because of course
Mhm.
their life depends
Right.
on this, of everything. They have to pay the bills. They're lots of dependent on them. So there is, of course, there is a deep down fear going on. And if the culture is like that, that does not talk about it, or that does not give them an opportunity to share how they feel, it's kind of create a kind of fearful environment. So,
Mhm.
and even in the beginning you said that, I think your work is very much relevant to that as you said, that it's overcoming the fear, because you said that when
Mhm.
you were going through all those episodes of this heart racing conditions and something, and there was a fear, and it's like it's going to happen now, and there's a constant fear, but you overcome that. So what do you think that, especially in that culture nowadays, that is prevalent in most of the organization, the element of fear is very much evident. So
Yeah.
how leaders maintain this kind of fear, so they get the growth of the and the culture of the company, it like
Mhm.
enhances, and the people also grow and the company also grow.
So there were a couple of things that you said in there, right? Because you also talk about, hey, everything may seem well, but there's this
Yes.
underlying
Yes.
feeling, like I don't
Absolutely.
quite know, this fear, right? That may not
Yeah.
even be expressed. And that reminds me also, like I told you, when I was well, and
Mhm.
I didn't know it was well. And that not knowing about, so what did that mean for me? How did that express? It wasn't only a feeling, it was the things I was not doing. It was the questions I wasn't asking. It wasn't the experiences I wasn't taking part of because I didn't know if I was yet well enough to be
Yeah.
able to do that. And I think that's a big part also with having that fear, underlying fear, even if things are well, even if things are going well in your organization, there could be
Yeah.
an underlying part. What is happening is stifling your innovation because when there's a part of fear that is
Yeah.
embedded somewhere in the culture, you won't have somebody asking those questions. You won't have like, oh, there's an opportunity to do this. Let me go do it. I
Yeah.
wasn't in my hand right away. I was consistently hesitant because I had a track record. I mean, I wasn't making it up. you know, it was real. It was legit. But now this is I have a new reality.
Yeah.
I had to be okay with my new reality, and it was a good thing. It wasn't a bad thing. It was good. But I had to learn, and I think that's again goes back to the organization. The leaders have to know what that well looks like, right? Because the point is not only one is because we need awareness of
Yeah.
hey, this is what good looks like, this is what well looks like, this is how we know we're winning. But the other part is so that we can do that, right? So that we can win, so that we can expand, so that we are able to okay, we need to take a risk, because and for anybody who's done a SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses,
Yeah.
opportunities, and threats, you understand that you're going to have to go and do again. If we need leaders, because not because it's been done before, we need leaders because we've never been there, and we're entering a lot where we haven't been there. So we need to understand what are things that makes us well. How do we know so that when we get into those other parts that we don't know, you know
Yeah.
on purpose uncertain, that fear is not going to stifle the very ideas, solutions, questions that we need. Another one is when you are in a very rigid place, right? Those like very process systems where really a lot of it is being looked at. There's just an overall culture of fear, disguised in accountability, disguised in like this part, like, oh, we just have an accountable culture. And
Yeah.
it's not that where you're using data instead of data to improve, data to data to be able to adapt, data to be flexible. We're using data as a punitive part.
Mhm.
So that's where a lot of parts you start seeing. I mean, I see that a lot of times with tech departments,
Yeah.
where they immediately
Yeah.
close the ticket, because that's what they're expected to do, right? Like they're measured on how fast, how quick a ticket can be closed. But so the fear is I'm just gonna close that, although it's not again, and I'm gonna put the burden on the customer to say that what was wrong, and then I get another ticket and I close it, put the burden back on the customer. Well, it's impacting in a sense the customer experience because
Yeah.
that is supporting the we want to get through as many tickets as we can culture.
Yeah.
understanding that in the rigid, right? So being able to look at that, and the same thing with the people. um, Emotion is part of us, but it cannot be the way that we're making decisions all the time. There has to be
Yeah.
emotional way process. I mean, obviously, financial systems are very much emotional, right? We know that about the stock market. We know
Yeah.
about sentiment. We measure consumer sentiment. Sentiment is
Yes.
well, it's just another word for feeling. Okay, that's just
Yeah.
we're measuring how people feel. So
Yeah.
anybody who says there's no space in feeling in business, it's not true. We're
Yeah.
talking about sentiment all the time. We're talking about sales, exchange of emotions. So it's there. So
Yeah.
we do need companies that foster that, but we have to have a similar language where we're able to deal
Mhm.
with it and grow from it. So
Mhm.
that's the other system. For me, better is going to mean different than what better means to you. So we have to
Yeah.
come to an understanding what is better for this according to the mission, and how are we measuring better. So it's not
Mhm.
just like, Amber, you need to be better next year. Well, what does that look like? What does that
Yeah.
mean? So
Uh-huh.
it's being able, yeah, the ability to be able to turn qualitative data into quantitative data so that
Yeah.
we're able to then adjust, adapt, and implement.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I know we can actually go on, and but unfortunately, the time is running out. So we just before I actually close the show, I would just ask you to give one piece of advice, and you say that if there's one thing you want every leader who's listening today to walk away with, what do you think? What would it be?
Alignment, the importance of
Hmm.
alignment. And alignment doesn't mean taking on more. Honestly, alignment, when implemented, alignment really tells you what you need to have less of. And
Yeah.
that is one of the things that actually the cure to my heart. At the end of the day, what was the cure? The cure was to burn away spots. I had too much of a good thing. I had too much, too many notes in there where the electricity did not flow well. So in my case, my cure was to burn away. So there was a clear pathway. It's the same cure that I learned as an entrepreneur. It wasn't what more I could do. It was what less we could do so that we can be more together. And
Yeah.
it's the same way that I will continue to ask the leaders today. When we talk about alignment, it's not one more thing can you pick up. It's really one thing can you let go of so that you can go into the greatness and be the great leader that you have been made to be.
Yeah, what a wonderful advice. I think it is something nowadays, what especially in this hustle culture, that you need to go this and you need to do this, especially with AI coming over. A
Hmm.
lot of people are into lots of things because the thing is that now AI, what I have seen, especially because you brought such a good point here, that with AI, a lot of people are actually not taking help of the human. And instead of like not taking help of the human, they are doing all the things on their own
Yep.
because, of course, because AI is there to help them. No matter, I mean, no wonder that it's there to help out and it's there to do things very quickly as well. But it doesn't mean that you have to do everything on your own. You can hire someone who can do the AI also,
Yes.
so who can you can actually focus more on something.
Yes.
It's not about, like as you said, it's not about like doing things more. It's like taking out from your, from your list and focus on things that really matter. So I love that advice. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
And yeah, and just tell us that how, people who are listening today, either like through live or through recording, what is the best way to reach out to you?
Oh, absolutely. Well, you can find me on LinkedIn because I know we have a LinkedIn Live. So look for me
Yeah,
and Hanna Bauer. I also
yeah,
might check out my website, HEARTnomics.com. And I do have a alignment assessment there that's complimentary for those of you that are interested to be more, to lead with heart.
Oh, that's a generous offer for all those who are listening. So please go check out the website that is going on the above this screen is the ticker. And I have already shared on the LinkedIn, but those who are watching on, I think, YouTube and the Facebook, I'll just put it on the comment. So anyways, thank you so much for joining and sharing your courageous journey with us. It's really inspirational, and I feel that this is so much important to actually talk about these type of topics, and these and it's people like you I think they give hope to lots of people who are going through such challenges. So, thank you for sharing your journey. Thank you for sharing your courage. You are an inspiration. So, thank you so much. Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Thank you, Ambry. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And those who are listening, thanks for joining. And please, if you have subscribed my channel, then please do that. Keep checking out. And if you have not, so please subscribe my channel. So, anyways, thank you so much, and hope to see you next week.